What is up, guys? Welcome back. You made it to episode 8. In this week's episode, we're going to be finishing up the front of the park, cleaning everything up before we move on across the lake. We're going to fill in the gap between the Midway and the wooden coaster lift hill with some shops and seating area, and then we're going to finish the pathway between the lift hill and the lake. We're going to add in some souvenir shops, and overall we're going to tidy up the front half of the park so we can move on and add some more rides in the back half. As we get started here, you see I'm working on the pathway, by our wooden coaster station and the lift hill. I wanted to open that up, make sure a lot of people could get through there with ease and have plenty of seating. I noticed that at the bigger parks, that's kind of how they do it, and so I wanted to incorporate that into this park. Now, keeping in that mindset, I also wanted to fill in this gap between our front entrance Midway and the lift hill for the wooden coaster. And originally I thought I was going to try to put a flat ride in there, but I decided against that and went ahead and built my own custom building and filled it in with restaurants. Now, my thought process going into making this building was I wanted it to make it look like another big storefront with multiple buildings, but all attached together. So that's why the center section I stuck it back a little farther than the other sections to make, and eventually here I'll change the color and it'll make it look like a completely separate building. Another thing that I was thinking about when I was making this building was not only to give the customers more restaurants and shops to shop from, but I wanted to give them another seating area. By lifting this platform for the buildings up a little bit and pushing it back off the Midway, it opens up this whole front area a lot more. By making the front of the building up on the platform, it gives me a whole separate section to put in seating, and eventually I'll put in a bunch of picnic tables here to fill it out. And what I like about this is once we get to a bigger guest population, it will give more room to spread out customers, more pathways for them to walk around, and hopefully create less bottleneck and let people flow through the park more easily. Now, what you see me doing here is putting in the barriers so people can't walk through the walls, but it encourages them to at least walk through the doors. Now, I haven't built a lot of custom buildings in this game yet, so I looked at the buildings that I used in the Midway as inspiration and references, just to fill in the gaps to make it look more realistic. Now, I really like the way that this brick border separates the levels of the building. It makes it look a lot taller than it actually is, and it just gives it more defining features and gives the building depth. And because I like the way the bricks looked, and I needed to fill in this gap between our platform and the other building, I went ahead and made a seating area. Now, I like to do this by sinking the bricks down so they cover up a bench that the guests can sit on, and therefore it makes it look like they're sitting on our brick. I still had that little gap behind it, so I went ahead and filled it in with a planter. I wish they made these in smaller pieces and make it so much easier. So now I'm going to try to start putting a roof on this building, and that was fun. Because it's on this corner like this, it made it a little interesting, and since I have that recessed building, it made it even more interesting to figure out. Now, when I stepped back and looked at this building, it still looked too small to be a part of our Midway, so I had to at least raise the side section up to a second story, which I, in turn, gave it more of the look that I was looking for. It fills in that blank space so you can't see the back of the buildings. And don't worry, I won't show it in this episode, but I do go in and I fill in the back of the current building that I'm working on, so from the parking lot you don't see the shops, you just see the back of a building. I keep them rather blank and bare because it's not the inside of the park, so there's no reason to give it extra detail. Now once I lifted this section of the building, made it a second story, it really drew the section together. And again, looking at the other buildings for references and inspiration, decided to throw in some window planters. So now I'm going to start working on that recessed building. I'm going to try to give it a different look. And starting off, I went ahead and changed the color of the doors, changed the color of the brick, and that really set it off from the other buildings. Now when we're finished with this, it's totally different from the rest of the buildings, but it still fits because it's still the same brick pattern, just different colors. I really like the way this turned out in the end. So one thing I really wanted to do with this building was I wanted it to look like it was all built at the same time. It's all the same building, but we have separate stores with separate identities. So the way I did that was I used the same brick and brick pattern throughout the entire building, but each store has separate roof lines, separate colors, separate door colors, and everything about each store is different except for the materials it's made out of is all the same. And I think that really pulled everything together and gave me the look that I was looking for. And as we finish up this end of the building, we're going to jump over to working on the rest of the platform, the seating area for the rest of the guests. Let's get to it. Alright guys, I'm back. I hope you liked that little break there. I thought that was pretty entertaining to edit and it was kind of fun, so look forward to something more like that in future episodes. Now moving forward here, we're going to be working on the midway and the pathway between the lift hill and our wooden coaster station. Now I took a lot of inspiration from Cedar Point midways, and again more inspiration from Lakeside here in Denver. Now this is a picture from Cedar Point, and I'm looking at the flower beds underneath the corkscrew here. I like how they're raised and they're colorful, and they're interactive so that you have to walk around them, but you also walk under the coaster, which I think is super cool. Another inspiration from Cedar Point is just their general Midway flower beds that I really like. Now over here on this side of the Midway, I'm going to put in some vending machines and an ATM. I'm going to steal that overhead awning from the other side that I made. I did this because I wanted to attract people to both sides of the pathway and to open the flow and get people moving around the park a little bit more. Now I wanted to block in the back of this awning, so I took a pre-made fence that I had made in a previous park just out of some planks and filled it in. Went ahead and wrapped it around, and then I'm going to drop down a couple pieces so it kind of fades into the fence that we got going on. I'm going to go ahead and throw in some fence here, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with this open area by the end of the lift hill, so we're going to finish that up here in a little bit. That's why I left the fence kind of dead end. We're going to go ahead and move on to our little flower bed here, add in some plants, some flowers, bring in some color, make this place lively and make it feel welcome. I wanted to give this area a splash of color, which is why I used the orange autumn colored trees, the pink bushes, and then my flowers that I use are going to be different colors. And I'm not going to fill in the whole thing because, like I said before, inspiration being from the Cedar Point flower beds, there's a lot of pops of colors, but there's also lots of open space. Makes it look very well manicured and groomed and taken care of. Now, I thought this was pretty simple. The lines of the flowers moved and it wasn't over the top, but it was still very pretty as you walk by. So I really like the way this turned out. Now for this area, my original idea was to put a small flat ride in. I was thinking doing that lethal plane ride, but when I went to find it, I realized that it wasn't there. And that's because a couple episodes back I went into Scenario Editor and moved where the guests enter the park area. And by doing that, I didn't go in and unlock all my rides, so a lot of them were gone. So I had to go in and fix that. But I didn't realize that until after I did this episode, so instead I went ahead and put in a Souvenir Station section, and I like this because it's up on the hill, it fills in this gap, it gives the people another place to go, and in the end it gives us a really beautiful lookout over the lake, over the park, and off into the distance. Now for this building, I wanted it to look like an old shack, like it had been there for a while, which is why I went with the wooden panels for the walls, and I left it the rustic red color. I really like the way this building turned out in the end. It's very cozy and it's a great place to come and hang out at the end of the day. I had to get a path up to it, so I smoothed out the terrain here. I wanted it to be kind of a leisurely walk up the hill, nothing too strenuous, and still handicap accessible. I went with the natural path here to make it look natural, and I think it just brought the whole area together. And with that, that's going to about do it for this week's episode. You guys know the drill. Go ahead and drop a like, leave any comments you'd like down below, and I try to get back to them. Don't forget to subscribe so you see the next episode. On that note, moving forward, our next episodes are going to be structured a little bit differently. I think I'm going to do more of an update style build or video instead of a narration style like I have been doing. So, with that, it might be a little bit longer before the next episode, but I'll get to it and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys. Bye.